How humans settled on Earth. The story of humanity's settlement on Earth is not merely a tale of survival. It is the grandest journey ever undertaken, written not in ink, but in footsteps across plains, mountains, forests, and seas. Imagine for a moment that you are standing on a vast savannah thousands of years ago, with nothing but the rising sun and a restless wind to guide you. There are no cities, no nations, no borders. Only a wide, untamed world waiting to be explored. How did we, fragile beings with no claws, no fur, and no wings, come to dominate every corner of this planet? How did we turn caves into homes, rivers into lifelines, and stars into guides? The answer lies in a saga of courage, adaptation, and curiosity, a saga of how humans settled on Earth. The beginning of this story takes us far back in time, millions of years before the first spark of civilization, to the African cradle of humankind. Fossil evidence and genetic studies point to Africa as the birthplace of our species, Homo sapiens, roughly 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. Yet, our ancestors were not the only human-like beings to roam the Earth. Long before us, other hominins such as Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and Neanderthals lived, hunted, and thrived in different environments. These early humans experimented with survival in diverse habitats, slowly learning the skills that would one day allow their descendants to spread across continents. The Earth was not handed to us. It was earned, step by step, through countless struggles and adaptations. At first, human existence was inseparable from nature. Life revolved around the hunt for food, the search for water, and the need for shelter. The earliest settlements were not permanent villages, but temporary camps near rivers, caves, or fertile lands where resources were abundant. Fire became humanity's first great tool of settlement, transforming the night from a place of terror into a circle of warmth and safety. With fire, humans cooked food, drove away predators, and told stories, the first sparks of culture. These small gatherings around flames were the earliest seeds of community, the very foundation upon which all future civilizations would rise. But to settle on Earth did not mean staying in one place. Instead, it meant learning to journey farther, adapt faster, and think beyond the horizon. Around 70,000 years ago, small groups of humans began leaving Africa, embarking on migrations that would carry them to the Middle East, Asia, Europe, and eventually to the farthest reaches of Oceania and the Americas. Each migration was a gamble against the unknown, requiring humans to master new environments. In deserts, they learned to conserve water. In icy tundras, they invented clothing from animal skins. In dense forests, they sharpened their senses for tracking and foraging. Every adaptation was a step toward claiming Earth as a shared home. Thus, the settlement of Earth was not a single event, but an unfolding process, a tapestry woven across generations. It was shaped by climate shifts, by the pursuit of food, and by the restless human spirit that refused to be confined to one valley or coast. Unlike other animals that stayed within fixed habitats, humans carried their world with them: knowledge, language, tools, and fire. Wherever they went, they recreated home. And in doing so, they transformed the planet itself. The journey of human settlement on Earth cannot be understood without recognizing the powerful role of the environment. Nature was both a teacher and a test. Climate shaped the movement of early humans, opening doors to fertile lands in one age and slamming them shut in another. The Ice Ages, in particular, were defining moments in the Great Migration of our species. During colder periods, vast sheets of ice covered much of Europe and North America, making survival nearly impossible in those frozen regions. But these same icy epochs lowered sea levels, exposing land bridges such as the Bering Strait between Asia and North America. These bridges acted like natural highways, allowing humans to reach new continents they might never have discovered otherwise. When small bands of early humans left Africa around 70,000 years ago, they were not explorers in the modern sense but survivors in search of food, safety, and stability. Their paths branched in many directions. Some followed the coastlines of the Arabian Peninsula and South Asia, using the ocean as a guide and a food source. Others ventured inland through the fertile valleys of the Middle East, where rivers like the Tigris and Euphrates carved life into the landscape. Over thousands of years, these migrations spread humans into Europe, where they encountered the cold challenges of Ice Age winters and the mysterious presence of Neanderthals. Still others journeyed eastward, reaching China, Southeast Asia, and eventually the distant islands of Australia and Oceania. The crossing into the Americas was perhaps one of the most dramatic chapters in this migration story. Roughly 15,000 to 20,000 years ago, during a period of lower sea levels, humans traveled across the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia into Alaska. From there, they fanned out across North and South America, adapting to climates that ranged from frozen tundra to tropical rainforests and high-altitude mountains. Each environment posed new questions. How do you build shelter against snow? How do you farm on steep slopes? How do you hunt in dense forests where visibility is scarce? The answers to these questions shaped unique cultures, technologies, and ways of life. Yet, settlement was not simply about reaching new places, it was about staying. Once humans discovered fertile regions where food was abundant, they began to shift from nomadic lifestyles to more settled patterns of living. The valleys of the Nile in Egypt, the Indus in South Asia, and the Yellow River in China became cradles of early human settlement. These river valleys provided not only water for drinking and farming but also fertile soil, replenished by seasonal floods, which allowed for agriculture. With the birth of farming, humans no longer had to chase herds of animals across plains. They could grow their own food, store it, and feed larger groups. This transformation marked a turning point in human settlement. Villages grew, where once there had been temporary camps. Simple huts evolved into permanent homes. People learned to domesticate animals, from dogs that aided in hunting to cattle and goats that provided milk and meat. For the first time, humans were not merely surviving on Earth, they were shaping it to meet their needs. Farming required clearing forests, digging irrigation channels, and building granaries. In these acts, humans became not just settlers but creators, molding the environment into something new. The spread of agriculture gave rise to the first true communities. Where there was once only kinship between small families, there now emerged societies bound by trade, cooperation, and shared rituals. Settlements became more than places to live. They became cultural centers, where language grew more complex, stories were passed down, and spiritual practices flourished. The earth was no longer a vast wilderness to be feared. It was becoming a home to be nurtured, defended, and celebrated. And yet, this home was never uniform. Different groups of humans adapted to different regions in unique ways. While some civilizations mastered irrigation in desert lands, others perfected fishing along coasts. In cold climates, furs became clothing and snow became insulation for shelters. In tropical regions, lightweight materials and open-air dwellings helped people endure the heat. In every case, settlement was not a single solution but a mosaic of strategies, each tailored to a specific environment. This diversity of adaptations would become one of humanity's greatest strengths, allowing our species to thrive in conditions that would have defeated others. The moment humans began to master agriculture, the foundations of civilization were laid. Farming allowed people to remain in one place for longer periods, and with this stability came the ability to plan for the future. Unlike hunters and gatherers, who lived from season to season, agricultural communities could store food, accumulate resources, and support populations larger than ever before. This surplus transformed the human experience, freeing some individuals from the daily struggle for survival and allowing them to specialize in new roles: toolmakers, builders, priests, and leaders. The birth of settlements such as Catalhoyuk in Anatolia and Jericho in the Levant marked the earliest attempts at permanent human communities. These places were more than collections of houses. They were symbols of humanity's first true step toward shaping Earth as a shared home. Within their walls, people experimented with architecture, developed systems of trade, and created rituals that gave life meaning. With each passing generation, these early villages became the training ground for the great civilizations that would follow. Technology became humanity's most powerful ally in settlement. The discovery of the plow revolutionized farming, allowing humans to cultivate more land with less effort. Pottery enabled the storage of grain and water, ensuring survival through harsh seasons. Stone tools gave way to bronze and eventually iron, ushering in the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, where metallurgy transformed human ability to build, farm, and wage war. These advances were not isolated. They spread along trade routes, linking distant communities in webs of exchange that stretched across continents. Trade itself played a crucial role in the spread of settlement. A village that lacked certain resources could acquire them by bartering with another community. Salt, obsidian, copper, and spices traveled vast distances, carried on foot, by animals, or on simple boats. As goods moved, so did ideas, beliefs, and technologies. Human settlement was not a closed process, but a networked one. Each culture borrowed, adapted, and built upon the innovations of others. With trade and agriculture came the growth of cities, the true hubs of human settlement. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians built Uruk and Ur, cities with temples, markets, and complex administrative systems. The Nile gave rise to Egyptian civilization, where pyramids stood as monuments not only to kings but to humanity's ability to organize labor on a massive scale. In the Indus Valley, cities such as Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were marvels of urban planning, with advanced drainage systems that reveal a deep understanding of sanitation and public health. Meanwhile, in China, settlements along the Yellow River evolved into dynastic states that would shape culture and governance for millennia. Yet, settlement was never merely about physical structures. It was also about culture. Wherever humans settled, they carried with them the invisible architecture of language, art, and belief. Cave paintings, stone carvings, and early symbols evolved into written language, one of the greatest achievements of humanity. Writing allowed humans to record harvests, laws, and myths, giving permanence to knowledge that would otherwise vanish with memory. The earth was no longer just inhabited. It was narrated, remembered, and inscribed into history. Religion, too, emerged from settlement. As people clustered together, they sought meaning in the cycles of the sun, moon, and stars. Temples became centers of community life, where rituals bound people together and reinforced social order. These spiritual practices were not separate from settlement, but integral to it, giving cohesion and identity to growing populations. Settlement also brought challenges. Crowded living conditions meant new diseases could spread rapidly. Competition for land and resources led to conflicts, driving the development of organized warfare. Walls were built around cities, not only to mark boundaries, but to defend against rivals. In this way, settlement shaped both cooperation and conflict, laying the groundwork for the political struggles that would define human history. By this stage, humans were no longer simply adapting to Earth, they were reshaping it. Forests were cleared for farmland, rivers were redirected for irrigation, and hills were terraced for crops. The Earth itself bore the marks of settlement, as humans transformed landscapes to suit their needs. Each alteration came at a cost, but it also testified to humanity's relentless drive to make the planet a livable and meaningful home. Thus, the settlement of Earth entered a new phase, one defined not only by survival but by creativity, ambition, and the pursuit of permanence. Villages grew into cities, cities into empires, and empires into the great civilizations that would leave lasting legacies. The story of human settlement was no longer only about finding shelter and food. It was about building societies, forging identities, and laying claim to the Earth as a stage for human destiny. As civilizations grew, the process of human settlement expanded beyond mere survival and into the realms of ambition, conquest, and cultural exchange. Where early humans had once feared the vast unknown, their descendants began to see the Earth as a canvas upon which they could draw their vision of power and permanence. Settlements became kingdoms, kingdoms became empires, and empires reshaped the map of human existence. One of the earliest great expansions occurred in Mesopotamia, where fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers provided the basis for sustained agriculture. City-states competed and cooperated, each leaving behind innovations that influenced neighboring regions. The Sumerians gave humanity the gift of cuneiform writing, while the Babylonians codified laws that formed the foundation of governance. Settlement was no longer just about land, it was about systems, organization, and order. From Mesopotamia, ideas spread outward, linking cultures in ways that foreshadowed our modern interconnected world. In Egypt, settlement took on monumental forms. Along the Nile, human ingenuity turned seasonal flooding into a predictable cycle of abundance. Here, humans built not only cities but also pyramids, temples, and monuments that reflected a belief in eternity. Settlement became more than practical survival. It became an expression of philosophy and spirituality. The Nile settlements demonstrated that human beings could tame nature to such a degree that even death itself seemed less final, for the architecture of Egypt continues to speak across thousands of years. To the east, the Indus Valley civilization flourished with remarkable urban planning. Streets were laid out in grid patterns, drainage systems ensured cleanliness, and public baths hinted at an advanced concern for community life. These settlements show us that human beings were not only capable of survival but also of shaping environments with foresight and precision. Although much of their script remains undeciphered, the physical remains of their settlements tell a powerful story. Humans were learning not only how to live on Earth, but how to live well. China, too, played a pivotal role in shaping the settlement of Earth. Along the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, dynasties rose and fell, each contributing to the development of agriculture, philosophy, and governance. Settlements grew into fortified cities, and these cities became the centers of dynastic power. The Chinese mastery of irrigation, rice cultivation, and technological innovations such as gunpowder and paper would ripple outward across continents, influencing how humans settled far beyond East Asia. Meanwhile, in the Americas, human settlement took unique forms. In Mesoamerica, civilizations like the Maya, Aztec, and Olmec built cities that were both practical centers of governance and awe-inspiring ceremonial hubs. The Great Pyramids of Teotihuacan and the temples of the Maya mirrored the monumental settlements of the Old World, demonstrating a universal human impulse to express identity, spirituality, and ambition through built environments. In South America, the Inca civilization created settlements high in the Andes, where terraced farming and road systems demonstrated remarkable adaptation to mountainous terrain. Cultural exchange became the heartbeat of human settlement. Trade routes such as the Silk Road linked east and west, carrying silk, spices, metals, and ideas across thousands of miles. The Silk Road was more than a marketplace, it was a bridge of settlement. Towns and caravanserais sprang up along its length, becoming cosmopolitan hubs where cultures mixed, technologies spread, and religions encountered one another. Settlement thus took on a global character. No longer were societies isolated, but part of a wider network of human interaction. Seafaring civilizations pushed settlement even further. The Phoenicians, masters of the Mediterranean, established colonies that connected Africa, Europe, and Asia. The Greeks built city-states that emphasized civic life, philosophy, and art, and then carried their culture outward through colonization. The Romans followed, creating an empire so vast that its roads, aqueducts, and cities stretched across 3 continents. Rome's legacy of law, engineering, and urban planning still influences human settlements today. In each of these cases, the settlement of Earth was driven not by chance but by intention. Humans were no longer content to follow rivers and fertile valleys. They sought to expand, to dominate, and to leave their mark. Settlements became reflections of power, wealth, and knowledge. Earth itself was being reshaped, not just physically through agriculture and construction, but also socially, through shared identities, laws, and traditions. At the same time, human settlement always involved adaptation to the environment. In deserts, people learned to build irrigation canals. In cold climates, they learned to store food and insulate their homes. In tropical forests, they relied on biodiversity for medicine and sustenance. Each settlement was a dialogue with the land, a negotiation between human ambition and nature's boundaries. By the time the first millennium of the Common Era arrived, Humans had not only settled across all continents except Antarctica, but had also created complex civilizations connected by trade, migration, and conquest. Settlement was no longer local, it was planetary. Humanity's footprint stretched from the icy northern reaches of Scandinavia to the tropical rainforests of the Amazon, from the deserts of North Africa to the islands of Polynesia. The Earth had become a mosaic of human homes, each unique yet bound together by the same fundamental drive: to belong, to survive, and to thrive. By the dawn of the medieval era, human settlement on Earth had already covered every inhabitable continent, but the story was far from complete. The Middle Ages brought not only continuity in settlement but also transformation, as societies reorganized themselves in the aftermath of the great classical empires. While Rome had fallen in the West, its legacy lived on in the Byzantine Empire and in the newly emerging Islamic caliphates, each of which influenced settlement patterns in their own way. In Europe, settlement became strongly tied to feudal structures. Castles and fortresses dotted the landscape, not only as homes for nobility, but also as centers of protection for the peasants who worked the land. Villages clustered around these fortified sites, and over time, these grew into towns. Settlement here was shaped by security. People needed walls, defense systems, and order to survive in an era marked by frequent warfare and shifting political boundaries. Yet, even within these limitations, European towns began to thrive as centers of craft, trade, and learning. Meanwhile, the Islamic Golden Age reshaped human settlement across vast regions of the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Asia. Cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Damascus became vibrant centers of culture, science, and trade. Unlike the isolated villages of Europe, these cities reflected a cosmopolitan spirit, where scholars from different lands gathered to exchange knowledge. The spread of Islam also transformed the pattern of settlement by creating pilgrimage routes, trade networks, and cultural links that bound distant communities together. The Earth was increasingly knit into a web of interconnected settlements. Trade during this era was not confined to land. The Indian Ocean became a bustling highway for maritime settlements. Coastal cities such as Kilwa in East Africa, Calicut in India, and Malacca in Southeast Asia flourished as hubs where goods from across the world converged. Settlements here reflected diversity. Arab merchants, Indian traders, Chinese navigators, and African artisans mingled, making these coastal towns melting pots of languages, cultures, and traditions. In China, the medieval period saw remarkable developments in urban settlement. The Tang and Song dynasties fostered cities such as Chang'an and Kaifeng, which were among the largest and most advanced in the world. These cities showcased innovations such as paper money, bustling markets, and sophisticated infrastructure. Settlement here was a reflection of harmony between government planning and economic vitality, proving that human beings could create cities that functioned as engines of culture and commerce. The Americas, too, witnessed flourishing civilizations during this time. The Maya, though past their peak by the medieval period, left behind great cities with temples, observatories, and plazas. The Aztecs later built Tenochtitlan, a city of extraordinary scale and ingenuity, constructed on an island in Lake Texcoco. With its canals, marketplaces, and temples, Tenochtitlan was a masterpiece of human settlement, rivaling the greatest cities of the Old World. In South America, the Inca Empire connected its highland settlements through an impressive network of roads, demonstrating the power of human organization in even the most challenging terrains. Then came the Age of Exploration, which forever altered the course of human settlement on Earth. From the 15th century onward, European explorers set sail across the oceans, driven by curiosity, ambition, and the pursuit of wealth. The voyages of Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Ferdinand Magellan, and others opened new frontiers, linking the continents in ways never before imagined. The settlement of Earth entered a new phase, no longer about expanding within regions, but about connecting regions across oceans. Colonization reshaped the human map dramatically. Spanish and Portuguese conquests established settlements in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, bringing with them not only settlers but also missionaries, merchants, and armies. These settlements were often established on the ruins of indigenous civilizations, and while they created new cultural fusions, they also brought violence, disease, and exploitation. The settlement of Earth became a double-edged sword, a story of expansion and innovation, but also of loss and upheaval. Despite its dark aspects, the age of exploration expanded human settlement into truly global networks. Sugar plantations in the Caribbean, silver mines in South America, and trading ports in Africa and Asia tied distant lands into one economic system. New crops such as potatoes, maize, and tomatoes spread across continents, transforming diets and agricultural practices worldwide. This exchange, often called the Columbian Exchange, demonstrated how settlement was no longer confined to isolated regions. It had become planetary, with the Earth itself as a shared marketplace of goods, ideas, and peoples. By the end of this era, human settlement had reached a turning point. The Earth was no longer a patchwork of isolated civilizations, but a connected globe. Towns had grown into cities, cities into empires, and empires into global systems. The story of how humans settled on Earth had entered a new chapter, one where no land was beyond reach, and no culture was completely isolated. The dawn of the modern era brought with it the most dramatic transformation in human settlement since the invention of agriculture. If farming had allowed humans to cluster into villages and cities, industrialization propelled them into vast urban centers that redefined what it meant to live on Earth. The modern settlement story is one of rapid growth, innovation, and upheaval, a chapter that turned the Earth into a planet of cities. The Industrial Revolution, beginning in the late 18th century, changed everything. Machines replaced manual labor, factories replaced workshops, and railways replaced caravan routes. Settlements grew not because of fertile soil or rivers as in the past, but because of industry and opportunity. Cities like London, Manchester, New York, and Berlin swelled with populations drawn by the promise of work and progress. For the first time in history, more people began to live in towns and cities than in rural areas, marking a profound shift in human settlement patterns. With industrialization came urbanization. Cities expanded vertically with skyscrapers and horizontally with sprawling suburbs. Streets became lined with shops, factories, and apartments. Public spaces, parks, libraries, and theaters emerged as centers of civic life. The invention of electricity illuminated streets, making cities vibrant at night, while running water and sanitation systems improved public health. Settlement in this era was no longer about survival. It was about efficiency, productivity, and modernity. Transportation played a central role in reshaping settlements. Railroads stitched together nations, allowing goods and people to move faster than ever before. Steamships crossed oceans, shrinking the distances between continents. Later, the invention of the automobile and the airplane further revolutionized human settlement, making mobility a defining feature of modern life. Humans could now live farther from where they worked, leading to the rise of suburbs and commuter towns. The Earth seemed smaller, more interconnected, and more accessible than ever. Industrial settlements, however, were not without problems. Overcrowding, pollution, and poor working conditions became common in rapidly growing cities. Smoke from factories darkened the skies, while rivers were polluted with industrial waste. The challenges of settlement had shifted, no longer about finding food or shelter, but about balancing progress with quality of life. In response, movements for urban reform arose, leading to improved housing, sanitation, and labor rights. Settlement thus became not only a physical process, but also a social negotiation about how humans should live together in a rapidly changing world. Colonialism and globalization further expanded human settlement during this era. European powers established cities across Asia, Africa, and the Americas that served as administrative, military, and trading centers. Cities like Mumbai, Nairobi, and Singapore emerged as colonial hubs, later growing into independent metropolises that continue to shape global culture and economics today. Settlement had now become explicitly global, with cities serving as bridges between continents and cultures. The 20th century accelerated these changes even further. Two world wars destroyed many cities, but also spurred massive rebuilding efforts, leading to new designs, technologies, and infrastructures. The rise of the automobile transformed urban planning, giving birth to highways, suburbs, and sprawling metropolitan areas. At the same time, advances in communication, from the telegraph to the internet, reshaped the way humans connected, making physical distance less of a barrier in settlement. Megacities emerged, with populations in the tens of millions. Tokyo, New York, Shanghai, and Sao Paulo became symbols of humanity's ability to build at a scale unimaginable in earlier eras. These cities were not just settlements, they were microcosms of the entire planet, where people from diverse cultures, languages, and traditions lived side by side. Settlement on Earth had reached a level of complexity that mirrored the global interconnectedness of the modern age. But modern settlements also reflected inequality. While some cities gleamed with skyscrapers, advanced infrastructure, and wealth, others struggled with slums, poverty, and lack of resources. The human story of settlement in the modern era is thus not only about achievement but also about imbalance between rich and poor, developed and developing, urban and rural. By the late 20th century, settlement had begun to extend into new frontiers, the digital world. With the advent of the internet, humans created a virtual settlement where communication, trade, and culture could flourish beyond physical geography. This digital dimension has become an inseparable part of how humans live on Earth, blending the physical and the virtual into one global community. Thus, the modern era redefined settlement in three ways: by concentrating people into vast urban centers, by linking these centers into a global network of trade and communication, and by expanding the concept of settlement into digital spaces. Humanity had come far from the first fires lit on African plains. We had become city builders, world shapers, and networked citizens of a planet increasingly defined by human presence. Today, when we look at Earth from the vantage point of the 21st century, the story of human settlement seems both complete and unfinished. Complete because humans now inhabit every corner of the planet, from dense urban centers to remote villages, from desert communities to Arctic research stations. Unfinished because the challenges of settlement continue to evolve, demanding new forms of adaptation, creativity, and responsibility. The contemporary age is defined by unprecedented urban growth. Over half of the world's population now lives in cities, a milestone never before achieved in human history. Megacities like Tokyo, Delhi, Lagos, and Mexico City embody both the triumph and the tension of modern settlement. They are centers of innovation, culture, and economic opportunity, yet they also face massive challenges: congestion, pollution, housing shortages, and unequal access to resources. Settlement in the 21st century is as much about managing growth as it is about expansion. Globalization has turned settlements into interconnected nodes of a single planetary network. Goods manufactured in one corner of the world are consumed in another. Migrants carry cultures across oceans, and digital technologies erase borders in communication. A person living in Nairobi can collaborate instantly with someone in New York, while a farmer in rural Asia may use satellite data to plan irrigation. Settlement is no longer a matter of physical location alone. It is also about connectivity. The Earth itself has become a web of interdependent communities. But this age also forces us to confront the limits of Earth's capacity. Climate change, resource depletion, and environmental degradation pose existential questions about how humans can continue to settle on this planet sustainably. Rising sea levels threaten coastal cities, while desertification and deforestation endanger rural communities. Where once humans bent the earth to their will, now we are beginning to realize that settlement must also respect the boundaries of the natural world. Technological innovation offers both solutions and new challenges. Renewable energy, smart cities, and green architecture represent efforts to create sustainable settlements that minimize harm to the environment. At the same time, digital technology has given rise to a new form of virtual settlement. Social media, online economies, and remote work allow people to live in physical isolation while remaining part of a global community. This blurs the boundaries between traditional settlement and digital existence, redefining what it means to live together on Earth. Migration continues to be a major force shaping settlement today. Political instability, wars, and economic inequality drive millions of people to leave their homes in search of safer and more prosperous lands. Refugee camps, though often temporary, are also settlements, symbols of both human resilience and global injustice. These movements remind us that settlement is not static but a living process, shaped by the constant ebb and flow of human populations. At the same time, settlement today also reflects cultural exchange on a scale never before seen. Cities are mosaics of languages, traditions, and cuisines. A single street in Toronto or London may offer foods from 5 continents. A festival in São Paulo may blend Indigenous, European, and African traditions. Settlement is no longer just about geography, it is about cultural coexistence. This diversity is both a challenge, demanding tolerance and inclusivity, and a strength, enriching the human experience of living together on Earth. As we look to the future, the story of human settlement on Earth raises profound questions. Can we create settlements that are sustainable, equitable, and resilient in the face of global challenges? Will technology enable us to build smarter, greener cities, or will it deepen divides between those with access and those without? Will rising seas and shifting climates force new migrations, echoing the journeys of our earliest ancestors? Some even imagine that the next chapter of human settlement may extend beyond Earth, to the Moon, Mars, or orbital habitats. Yet, no matter how far humans may travel, the settlement of Earth will remain the foundation of our identity. This planet is not just where we live, it is where we became human. Its rivers, mountains, forests, and plains shaped us, taught us resilience, and gave us the resources to thrive. Even as we dream of the stars, Earth will always be our first and most important home. In conclusion, the story of how humans settled on Earth is one of extraordinary courage, creativity, and adaptation. From the first nomadic bands wandering the African savannas to the bustling megacities of today, our journey has been shaped by environment, technology, culture, and imagination. Settlement has meant more than survival. It has meant building communities, creating civilizations, and weaving a global tapestry of human life. The Earth is not simply where we live. It is the stage upon which humanity's greatest story unfolds. And as long as we continue to adapt, innovate, and learn, this story will carry us forward into whatever future awaits.